No, I need is the pin that goes in here. Welcome back to the Pit Stop Ranch. Hope you're in the mood for some hardcore head action. Flathead. One of our most popular videos recently was me attempting to save this head. And discovering the other head was messed up. So, decided to, we have been busy sanding and getting Jimmy already all prepped up to go ahead and do the final paint on. However, that's about as exciting to watch as paint drying, because some of it is watching paint dry. So I thought I'd take a break from all the sanding. I don't know how well you can tell. I'm covered in primer dust. And get back on our 59A here. Biggest thing is we'll be getting a bunch of loose parts we've been collecting over the last year and put it together and bring them up nice and tight so that we can, one, make some room, and two, we'll be able to button up this motor and have it ready then to go on. Well, we're going to put it on the engine test stand, get it fired off, make sure it runs good, make sure the carburetors are good, and before we store it. But once we store it, then we know we got a good solid running flathead engine ready to go on the trog build when time comes to do the trog build. Alrighty, well, this flathead's coming together. We are missing a few parts. We're missing this piece of sheet metal, the front pulley, handful of other important odds and ends, but we got the flywheel on here. Engine turns is free with it and installed as without it. Yeah, oil pan's on. Now this oil pan is from like an F100. So we are fortunate. We live relatively close to the early Ford store in San Dimas, California. And one of the things we really needed was a timing cover, which they happen to have. So we went and picked it up. Now it is the 3-bolt style, which we actually wanted the later 2-bolt style. However, we were unable to find them. Not only that, we had a hard time finding distributors. But if you recall, we happened to have picked up a couple 3-bolt distributors, and because we're a real glutton, a magneto. So the plan is actually going to be to run this setup on this magneto, but we need to go through the magneto and double check and try a few things before we actually install it. But before we put in the magneto, we're going to put on a timing cover and water pumps. So go ahead and button up the front of this engine so we make sure we keep the crap out. Now on this timing cover, one thing I noticed is there's a severe wear area right here. Like it, some machining occurred, unintentional machining occurred. And looking at it, comparing it, I compared it to the front of this timing sprocket, timing gear. And this is a cast aluminum one. However, the original ones were plastic. And if you look at the geometry, and they're very similar if you look at them. You have this ridge here, and then you got these bolts that hold it on. Well, if you look, this valley here, the circular valley here, corresponds nicely to these bolt heads. And so it's pretty clear that this was somehow these head bolts had backed the engine that this was on. These backed out and started machining on the front back side of this cover, clearanced it. Fortunately, I don't think that's going to be a problem with ours. We need to change the rope seal here, and then we'll go ahead and just bolt it on and go from there. These timing gears, you can tell they're helically cut, which means they're cut at an angle relative to the central axis. So, and since this turns clockwise, this creates pressure on the cam gear and pushes it into the block. Otherwise, given this clearance, this which I don't know why it would cause that, other than if the engine was run backwards for a protracted period of time, it would force the gear out into the cover and cause that to get worn. Whereas in this condition, in this shape, it is being thrust into the block against, I presume, the appropriate bearing surface. So and the important thing when using like RTV gasket maker like this is a little bit goes a long way. You don't need much. Now, I'm using this same way that you'd use old school Permatex gasket maker, which, by the way, this is Permatex, same maker. But the idea is to kind of glue the gasket in place. Some of these holes are blind, some of them go into the water jacket. So we're going to use some RTV as thread sealer. Now once you've got them brought down, I like to use the impact to bring them down, but not to bring them to the final torque, because it's not calibrated. But Matt, you say, your arms are not calibrated. To which I say, you're absolutely correct, they're not. But at least you have some feel. And there you go. Now, it's real important inside these throats is another bolt. And you want to use stainless steel in there, even if you don't use stainless steel in the rest of the water pump bolts. Because, yeah, that'll make it easier to get them out later. So here are our new heads. We went ahead and went with Edelbrock. These are obviously new Edelbrock heads, done in the classic traditional logo, the original block logo, except they're ported, CNC'd. We looked at a number of mildly used sharp heads that the seller wanted more than these, and we looked at a number of other heads, and these are going to be right. These are going to work. So can't argue with that. So, and they're going to look good on here with the acorn nut head nuts. Nice thing about Edelbrock is they're still cast. Not only are they cast in the U.S., cast and machined in the U.S., they're actually cast and machined in Southern California. I honestly can't tell the difference between I can't tell if there is a difference between each side. So here we go. So we got the stud. So I have the stud, and we need to thread it on. Now I haven't had, when all the studs are sticking up, I haven't had much luck getting a head on. So I find it's easier to put it on with 2 or 3 studs in the block, put the head on, and then thread these on. Now the good ARP ones have you fit a little hex drive in there and run them in, not a problem. But these are the Speedway motor ones, and while they're perfectly fine for this application and good, that's one of their downsides. So what I've got is I've got a couple of jam nuts. And you get them started. Snug them up. Not too tight, but tight enough. And in this particular instance, the flats line up perfectly, so that's interesting. Though, don't count on that. Take your thread sealer, which, you know, there's actual proper thread sealer, and then there's me with the RTV. Thusly, and then you stab it in a hole. Now with the jam nut technique like this, you want to go ahead and jam them up a little high. And if you don't torque them too tight, you should be able to get them off just like that. And you bring them down until you seat, and that means you're threaded all the way in, and now you can take it off. Lather, rinse, repeat. 20 more times for this side. 24 times for the other side. And you're ready to put on the lug nut, the head nuts. Okay, so I got the studs in both sides. Both new heads are sitting loosely on the block. Next step, go ahead and let's get these things, get the acorn nuts on here, and these things torqued down. You watched me thread all these in with the head on. So you saw me do that because you have had a hard time getting this thing to seat down against it. Now there's a little bit of black RTV around every single one of these coming out, which is a good thing because we don't want them leaking. But we are, nothing's tweaked. They all thread on real nice. So though these are the studs from Speedway, so they're closer to stock strength, probably grade 5 level. We're using ARP other fasteners, other hardware. So first step, we need to put the washers on, which this was already open. So toss these on. Now, it's real important we get a little bit of lube on all of these studs, because that'll be crucial for getting proper torque spec. Now, never use one of these to put head nuts on, or head bolts in. Alright, we got the torque sequence right there. Now it says to break it up into 3, 20, 40, and 55. My wrench doesn't do 20 too well. So I'll do 30, 40, and 60 probably. Now we're going to take it up to 40. Do it again. And last is supposed to be 55. I'm going to 58. 458. Now, in case you're new to putting heads on anything, you need to do, there's what's called the torque sequence, which is something you really need to do. You need a, you know, and this is numbered out corresponding to each one. Now, there's two prevailing thoughts on torque sequence. One is start in the middle and progressively work your way out. The other prevailing theory is crisscross until you get there. Both start in the middle and work out. Now, according to ARP, they recommend the crisscross approach, at least with this setup. Now, you'll also notice when I was torquing these, I went ahead in the last pass, I did all of them, then I went back and checked them all again. That's because as we torqued the middle down, it compressed the gasket. And as we crisscrossed back and forth and equaled that out, compressing the gasket, these had less tension on them, so less clamping power. So I went ahead and went through and did it again to make sure that we got even clamping power. And it wouldn't hurt to do it again. Now, while we're running this thing in on the stand, one of the things that I will do is, and I did this with the other one, is go ahead and redo the torque pattern after it's got a couple thermal cycles in it. Because as they expand and contract and everything else. Now, you don't want to overdo it because the deck height on these engines is kind of, the deck thickness up here is kind of thin. And this thing has been decked, so not a lot, but it's been decked. So that means there's even less meat for the studs to thread into. So we don't want to go too crazy and pull that deck right out. Now, we are not going to go crazy torquing these. I am going to cheat with the impact, of course. And at this point here, we've come to a stopping point, a logical stopping point, though we're far from done. This video is already late. I need to get it cut and put out. And simple fact of the matter is, I have a lot of things going on in the background that don't make very good video. So, still want to keep providing you fine people with some quality entertainment that we can only generate here at the Pit Stop Ranch. However, this is still, we're going to keep going on this. Some of the things to look forward to coming up is we're going to go through these carburetors. We have the center one, which I believe is a really nice, good one. This end one here is bound up and needs to be taken apart and cleaned. And this one here seems to be pretty good as well. So, fortunately, we do have a carburetor rebuild kit for this one here. I'll probably see about ordering at least one more, if not two more of these carburetor kits. So we got the parts for these two. On the other engine, we had 3 brand new carburetors. Here we got 3 used carburetors. So they really all of them really need to be gone through the rebuild kit, see what's in them. If I have to order jets, and go through and make sure they're all set equally and or center set up and then set the end ones up. These two have to be set up the same, and this one could be set up a little differently, but then we need to get the progressive linkage to start rolling on the center carburetor and then open up quickly the secondary carburetors as demand requires it. The other thing to really look forward to is dum dum dum. We have this wonderful magneto, and we'll need to figure out how good it is and what we need to do on this to get it to work. It bolts up. It's the right pattern. It's the 3 pattern, and then there's a adjuster plates, and it's actually a pretty slick setup. But we're going to be going through that. That's probably going to be a own video and all by itself as well, simply because I don't think there's any videos specifically about going through a magneto. And don't worry, I have no idea what I'm doing. So it should be an adventure and potentially a very expensive one. And on that exciting note, if you like what we're doing, please hit the like button. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe. Really appreciate it if you do. And until next time, once again, have a flat-tastic day.